Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome not just to ICB TV, but award-winning ICB TV. I hope you saw the new logo that we've got there. Yeah, very pleased last week. Those of you who were with us last week, we were awarded ICB TV as the Innovation of the Year, which is brilliant. I'm very pleased about that. And you're all still with us, or most of you are still with us. In fact, we've even gained bits of audience in places, so that's really fantastic. And of course, ICB itself was named as Accountancy Body of the Year. So that sort of puts us up a few steps and takes us in there with the big guys. I think we pushed, I can't remember if it's ICAW or ACCA off its pedestal to get that one. So well done you all for helping us create this fantastic reputation. I'm sitting here without my tie today. I've just come straight through the door, having been well and truly AstraZeneca'd. I just had my second jab, so I'm now feeling invincible, but still being careful. So those of you who haven't had one yet, hope your time comes soon. Those that you had, great, we're in the club. I haven't put on my little badge saying I've had my jab. I haven't worn a badge like that since I was in the Tufty Club. Those of you who remember the Tufty Club, but never mind. That's a sign of age. I have the ever young person who will know nothing at all about the Tufty Club there, Jacquie Mount, with us as always, and no doubt waiting to flood you with the latest and best advice that you can get anywhere. Jacquie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's been a busy week, especially, well, today's been busy because I actually took 4 days leave off, or 3 days leave after the bank holiday. So it's been a lovely, fairly restful week. So I've come back, as you always do, when our members go back to work. The queries are all there, they all come flooding in, so I'm still trying to catch up with them. So anyone who sent in some technical queries, I will get back to you as soon as I can, but I've cleared the old ones that came in earlier in the week. But anyway, so welcome. There's a few bits and pieces to go over today. One interesting little tidbit of information that I picked up from one of the social media sites this week was, you may be not sure if it will affect many of our members, but back in April 2020, so last year, they changed the rules for paying capital gains tax on the disposal of certain properties. So if you're a landlord or if you've got a second property and you dispose of it, as you're probably aware, it's subject to capital gains tax over and above your annual allowance, which I think is £12,300 at the moment. And we always used to put this on our self-assessment tax returns at the end of the year and any tax you paid at that time. Well, last year, the rules changed and you now have to pay the capital gains tax on the sale of a property within 30 days of the completion of the sale. Now, I've spoken to several people who were going through the process at that time, and the way it's sort of been organised is that maybe your solicitor that's dealing with the conveyancing or the estate agents will work out with you how much tax is due, and then you have to pay the tax within 30 days. Well, of course, as you can imagine, not everybody paid that tax within 30 days. And because of COVID, they did allow a slight relaxation of the rules, and the government haven't charged this automatic £100 penalty for not paying this. But however, they are now claiming back all the back tax that's due, and there are penalties and interest on late payments of the tax. And up to date, I'm just looking for the figure here, the HMRC have recovered £1.3 million of tax revenue since they started chasing this up, and I think there's an awful lot more to come. I can't remember the number of individuals that covers, but anyway, if you are involved in capital gains tax, do remember that the 30-day rule is there, and they are now actually starting to follow up on this. So that's just a little tidbit of information for anyone who's doing self-assessment tax returns with capital gains tax, but it is only on property. It's not on any of the other capital gains. A few bits on furlough. April claims are open and have been open for a while. Remember, the closing date for claiming the April furlough payments is the 14th of May, and I think we've got till the end of May to make any adjustments to that. So watch out for that date, because that is next Friday. So if you're doing your claims, make sure you get them in by next Friday. Now, on Wednesday, Ian Holloway did his Wages Wednesday, and a lot of what he did sort of duplicated across what we've been doing here, which is not an issue. So anyone who is able to watch that, because it is limited to payroll diploma people, so fellows, payroll agents, that sort of thing. He did some quite detailed information on Wednesday. And I would strongly advise you to watch that if you're into payroll, because there was an awful lot of information that came out there. And I'm so glad he's doing those and not me, because they really are extremely complex. But I just want to pick up on a few things that he said, and to reiterate what he said about the furlough claims. Now, there are 3 dates, relevant dates or reference dates that you have to be aware of. One is the 19th of March 2020. Now, thinking way back to when this whole thing started, remember the 19th of March was the day by which you had to have had an RTI submitted to enable you to furlough your employees and claim the furlough back. So that took us through the first 6 months. And then when we got to the 1st of November, we had the second reference date for those that weren't entitled to be furloughed during that first 6 months. And that second reference date was the 30th of October. And when the Chancellor announced the extended coronavirus job retention scheme, he announced it on the 1st of November, and then announced there and then, I think, or the 2nd of November, announced there and then that it was eligible now for anyone who had had an RTI submitted by midnight on the 30th of October, not even the 31st, it was the 30th. So that meant that anyone who had been employed from the 1st of April last year up to and including the 30th of May and had had an RTI submitted, they could now be furloughed and you could claim the furlough basis. Now we have third date, because now that the furlough scheme has been extended to the end of September this year, there is a new date of the 2nd of March 2021. And this is the date that was relevant to the day the Chancellor announced the extension and what was going to happen from the 1st of April onwards. Now, there's been a few bits and pieces announced since then and a few minor adjustments. But one of the things that Ian was saying, and I just want to confirm, is that those dates are very relevant, because if you read the guidance, what you are actually paying your employees, you know, we've had so many conversations about what is the 80% furlough based on, what is the hourly rate we're using, what is that? It's to do with the relevant reference date at which they started to be furloughed. So if your employee was originally furloughed back in March last year, you are still tied in to exactly the same payment dates that we had at the start. So we're looking at the pay on the February 2020, or if they're variable hours and variable pay, you've got to look at the average of the last 12 months or the relevant month. And that goes through, and we're still talking about 2019. So if your person was furloughed back in last March, then they're still looking at the old wage rates that they were on prior to the 19th of March, or the 1st of March 2020. Now, if you took someone on between the 1st of April and the 30th of October, the relevant calculation that you're looking at there is their average wage or average hourly rate from the 1st of April or the day they started up to and including the 30th of October. So if they're in that group 2 reference, that's how you work out your current hourly rate that you're based on. And then if they are in reference group 3, which means that they started off with you after the 1st of November, they're now being furloughed from April. What you're looking at for the average hourly rate or their wages for the 80% calculation is again the average from when they started up to and including the 2nd of March. Now that is ridiculously simple, isn't it? I'm sure you all know exactly what I'm talking about. Those who have been in this since the start will be probably well aware of that, but it might be worthwhile just picking that up. Now, if you want some more details on that, Ian cleared that, and I think Alex has just put the link to that for those who can log into that on the chat line. So please do go and have a look at that. Now, the other thing you've got to consider, and I've had a couple of queries about this, we're into a new tax year, it's the employer's allowance. You need to look at whether you can claim the employer's allowance, and we've got some members who have been told that their clients can't claim the employer's allowance this year because Last year, they weren't earning, their employees weren't earning enough to enable them to claim the £4,000. But remember, you can either claim the employer's allowance or you could have claimed the employer's national insurance. Well, now that the employer's national insurance, you can no longer claim that back through CJRS. You might need to start to have a look at whether or not you can claim the employer's allowance again. Now, I know through your software or through the links on HMR.gov.uk, you can actually work out whether you're entitled to. So do watch out for that. And if you can claim that this year, then please do claim, because we don't have this conflict with CJRS this year. Now, the one thing I picked up now this time, from the 1st of May this month for the furlough claims, previously, if you'd made somebody redundant, you could bring them back and furlough them. Now, from the 1st of May, that is no longer an option. If you made somebody redundant back in, say, February or March, you can no longer take them back and furlough them. Now, I just literally picked that up on a tiny line that I read somewhere this week. So please do go and check out. I can't remember if it was on one of the newsletters I got or whether it's actually in gov.uk. I'm sure it is somewhere, but do check if you're looking at redundancies. And it is my belief that you can't take people back from that now. So that's basically all I've got as of today. As I say, there's a few bits going up there. Garry, I don't know whether you want to come back now with anything you've got to say, and I'll pick up any questions that come in.
I think most of the links, as you say, have just been put up, which is up there. There were a couple of questions, but they've disappeared. So I don't know if they were also just asking for the links, in which case Iris has sorted that out. Iris, is that okay?
Yes, they were both. Yeah.
Right, great.
They were both to do that.
No, I don't think there's a lot happening at the moment. I've been very pleased to see that the Chancellor says we're all going to see double-digit recession growth, not recession growth, double-digit growth, and all this sort of stuff. We're finding a lot of our members are saying that they are very pleased that they haven't looked at one specific industry as a bookkeeper. You know, they do have quite a broad collection of clients, because some industries, as we know now, have had problems. We do have one or two members that specialised, and I think some of them have been finding it rather difficult. We've got a couple of members who just looked after the licensed trade, for example. So that's been very difficult for them, and we're there for you. And you know, anything we can do to help, please let us know. And I remember many years ago, one of the speakers, I have a feeling it was Jennifer Warrower at Summit, said you need to concentrate, you know, because then you can get really good at doing a particular thing and looking after a particular client. And she was a bit annoyed that I went on and contradicted her. And I said, I don't think that's the right advice. I think bookkeepers, their strength is that they actually are masters of all trades and jack of none, as I put it. And I think it's quite important now that in these times that people can major in on those clients that are still there, still have got viable businesses, and they're not losing the entire business. So I think it's something to work forward. I remember we went across to America, and when we were doing ICB USA over there, and Jan, who was our great CEO at the time, said, you've got to concentrate on the niches. The riches are in the niches. And I think I've said this before. Took me a while to figure out what the hell she was talking about, but she meant niches, in the niches, you know, niche markets. So go for niches, go for specialists, get a special knowledge of something, so that you can go say, oh, well, I specialize in. And anyway, apparently the riches are not always in the niches. So we're, yeah, I think it's quite important that you spread your load a lot. I don't think really much more than that. It's been a very busy week for ICB generally, because we are just going through all of our procedures and various other documents that we have online. No major changes, nothing for you to worry about. But as always with these things, we look at something we wrote 12 months ago, or in some cases 12 days ago, and think, well, hold on a minute, we could have just tweaked it this way or tweaked it that way. And we've got a few new people coming in now, so they're looking at things differently. But generally speaking, that's taken up most of our time. So, but as I say, if there's anything, I don't think there'll be any major changes, but if there are any, we will let you know. I was very pleased that at the weekend, June and I went shopping for the first time for however many months it is. It was quite surreal almost. we did walk around John Lewis's, and it was almost dead. So I'm not sure how much future there is for the very large stores, but I was very pleased to see that we went to we live in Romsey's, I think I've told you before, and just up the road from us is Salisbury, and one of our members, Chrissy Applin, in her spare time, actually runs an antique emporium there. It's called the Phoenix Emporium. So knowing that Chrissy was there, and we love antiques and looking around anyway, we went off to see this emporium, and it's great. And it's very nice on such occasions to meet somebody who says, Mr. Carter, hello. And, you know, we knew each other because we're in a relatively new area for us down here, so we don't know many people who know us. And on occasions, even when they do know us, we try and sort of, oh dear, just in case they're not very happy with us. But yeah, so it was nice to see her there, and see that people have got lots and lots of irons in the fire, and so I can recommend it. I'm not getting paid for the advert, by the way, and I didn't get any discount either. We bought a little statue for the garden. And having got it home, decided it wouldn't fit quite where we wanted it to. It didn't look quite right. So it's on the sink unit at the moment, standing there about 18 inches tall, because we don't know where to put it. But anyway, thank you for that. I'm sure for a house that has got so many things crammed into it, why we go and buy another one, I don't know. But I've been watching too much Bargain Hunt. That's mine. Tend not to have much in the way of a lunch, but what I tend to do is have 10 minutes for the sandwich or something or other, and I always look on the BBC archive, and I don't watch the whole programme. I just like to see the auction at the end, where they either get a small fortune for something, or you're looking at it and thinking, oh, why wasn't I there? I'd have bought that for 15 quid, but never mind.
Yeah.
I think we are adding a few different things now at the moment that we're going to be doing over the next couple of months. We are working on it. We've got a lot of speakers. Things I think are starting to settle down a bit. So we've got a few more people now available, and we'll be working on that. And so I think there's some interesting times coming up. As always, we're trying to give you even more. We've got our marketing team working on the Inspire Tour. Yes, there will definitely be an Inspire Tour. It will be virtual, obviously. Conference this year will also be virtual again, but as I think I've mentioned to you already, we are trying to do a live event just because it's our 25th anniversary. We didn't want to miss it completely, but a live event for the Lucas. So give everybody a chance, to join in with us. But there will be an added on virtual bit as well. So you won't miss out if you don't want to come all the way down to London, or I presume it's going to be London, but wherever it's going to be, and get a chance to put on your posh frock. Or in some people's cases, just dance the night away. And we've got some surprisingly good dancers, and one or two surprisingly bad ones, but we won't go into that. And so those of you who want to look at YouTube, there are a lot of our past conferences and Lucas on there, but look out for the Luca Award for, I'm not quite sure what year it was now, but there is a marvellous piece with Jason Dalton, who roars back with laughter, but the music just plays into that beautifully. It's the focal point of the whole thing. So hello, Jason. I hope I'm not embarrassed you too much, but it's a really good video. So that must have been, I presume, 2018. But anyway, have a look at that. There is going to be life out there. We understand we're going to be doing some things there. Those of you who are saying, well, are we going back to centre-based exams now? At the moment, no, we are continuing with the proctored exams because they have been so successful. Record numbers of people getting through. And, if you want to take your final exam, your M8, come up into full membership, get your practice license, or go and find a big job somewhere, that's the thing to do. And the proctored exams is the way to do it. And it's great, and it's very unintrusive, actually. So give us a call if you've got any queries, and let's have a chat. Have we got any?
Right. I've just put up a link on the chat line. Now, the reason I put that up is that Pauline, who's online, has come in with a query, and I'm going to read it out to you. She says, I have a client who is thinking of employing someone who was previously working for her as self-employed. She was looking at employing her as a worker rather than an employee. Could someone please explain the difference? Now, the link that I put up there, and I know Pauline's got it because she said thank you, is from gov.uk to do with the employment status. And that is a very, very useful link because it explains the difference between a worker and an employee and various other types of job links that you can have. An employee has slightly more rights than a worker. And for example, they're both entitled to minimum wage, they're both entitled to holidays. Now, if you remember back the Uber taxi thing that we've had going on recently differentiates the self-employed from the workers. And there's a whole change going on there as to what should and shouldn't happen about holidays, pay and all sorts of things. The other difference is that it says a worker may be entitled to things like statutory maternity pay. Now, the link is there, and the CEST tool, which I think appears near the bottom of that, is worth doing anyway. I've mentioned this before for yourselves as bookkeepers when you're working with a client. If you're working with a client a day, a month or something, and you're going in or taking work at home, then that's not an issue. But if you end up going into a client's offices for, say, 3 days a week, then as a self-employed bookkeeper, that may have to be treated as worker or employee status. So even for yourselves, we're then looking at something which is aligned to off payroll working. Now, there is a CEST tool on that, which you can go through to check the employment status. Now, I've done it for a couple of scenarios, and you get to the end, and whatever comes out of that at the end can be taken as a true representative of how HMRC will treat that person, providing you've answered the questions correctly. So if you're interested, there's the link. And Pauline, if you've got any other questions, do come back to me. Now, before I go into any other questions, I do want to raise an issue that's cropping up a lot now. And I will say, ICB is working on a formal response on this, but I just want to raise this. Now, it's to do with the self-employment grants, the SAYS grants. Now, what's happening with our members is, as you are aware, as an agent, you've not been able to claim those SAYS grants. The individual has to do it themselves. And at the moment, because it goes through their personal tax account, as an agent, you don't have access to that. So we've got a lot of members who are saying, how can we prove what they've been given? Because that could have gone through their personal account. I've had some lovely feedback from one member, which I've actually passed on to HMRC to say, can we as agents see proof of what's been paid under the SAYS grant so we know what to put through the accounts because it's taxable. Now, what is happening is that several of you are now have finished your last year's accounts and have realized that the income for certain clients has not been reduced. Now, in some cases, income has reduced because they've been closed or they've had a reduction, their business has not been working full time. But I've got one particular instance this week where a member has actually sent me some comparative figures. And actually, because of the hours that this person has been working to try to keep his business going, his income has actually gone up. But he's claimed all the grants and there is proof that the income has gone up. Now, my response to that member was that the individual had to sign a declaration that their income or profits had been affected due to COVID. Now, had been reduced due to COVID. Now, this member is having a slight problem with this client because the client's saying, well, it didn't actually say that. It's, you know, it's COVID. I've been working hard. I'm claiming as much as I can. What we are trying to come up with at the moment is a wording that you can possibly use for your clients in this situation so you know how to tell them. Because what the rule is at the moment is that if they have definitely claimed the SAYS grant in knowledge that they shouldn't have got it, and the fact that HMRC have said they were eligible for a claim doesn't mean that they should have been claiming it, because the eligibility is based on the average of the previous 3, or for the current grant, the previous 4 years of income and profits below £50,000. HMRC did not have the information at the time that said proved that their income had been reduced. And this is what's coming up now that we're into the end of the fiscal year. Now, the rules are that if the individual has knowingly claimed the grant when they shouldn't have done so, i.e. fraudulently claimed it, they have 90 days in which to return that grant before any penalties kick in. Now, if they have inadvertently claimed it because of an error, because say they didn't know that their income hadn't been reduced, this is the sort of people that perhaps don't have ICB bookkeepers to inform them on this, or who they have until January 2022 to return that money before penalties will start to kick in. And we've got quite a few, I think we've probably got at least half a dozen members who are currently in this situation whereby they now firmly believe that their clients should not have claimed the savings grants. So we are working on this. We are trying to come up with something that you can actually go to your clients. But the rule is they signed a declaration to say that their income or their profits have been reduced. What we're trying to work on is your liability for this when you come to do the claim. So I don't want to say any more about that today, because we will come back to you with this at a later stage. So just an interesting one to watch out for, that some members have already hit this particular problem.
So do you think RC is going to use a guilty until proved innocent, or till innocent until proved guilty?
What HMRC will do is, once you've done your tax return, now if they are suspicious, now that might be, the suspicion might be if they employ members of staff and the salaries say have gone up or something, and they'll know that through the RTI, and they are claiming. That is one way. I mean, now that HMRC actually do joined up writing with all its various departments, it can link the self-employed bit. Well, sorry, that was a bit sarcastic. I saw Gary's face there. But over the last few years, the interlinks since RTI have definitely improved a lot of the information that is available. What HMRC is saying is that they're starting to do some investigations where they perhaps feel that grants have been claimed incorrectly. So I think I mentioned this about 3 weeks ago, that they are starting to write to people before the fourth grant to ask for some additional information on that. Now, I think what will happen is when you start to do the self-assessment returns and they look at the self-assessment returns, if they compare the 2 years and it's gone up and there's a SAYS grant in there, they're going to start putting in an investigation. And this is where individuals are going to have to start proving this. Now, obviously, once we get into MTD for ITSA, which isn't happening until mandated until April 23, HMRC will have quarterly information on the income. So should, perish the thought, we ever get into a situation again in the future where there are these grants available, once we're into MTD for self-assessment, HMRC will have the information on the income on a rolling quarterly basis, and we'll be able to very easily check back against the previous year rather than wait for the self-assessment, because there is that delay of 9 months or so from the 6th of April right the way through to the 31st of January before they actually get all the information they want. So yeah, at some stage, I think they're going to start doing some investigations, Gary.
Yeah, I got a sort of related query last week. Somebody who has a client who furloughed all of the staff, but then went online and has actually now added more than 50% to the turnover of their business, and is now looking to lay off the staff. But the query was, well, if they've been making so much additional money and very little costs, should they actually pay back the furlough amount? Will government expect them to do that? So again, I'm hoping that as part of the Inspire talk, we'll have somebody talk to us about employment rights, because it's something that's cropping up more. I mean, the thing is with bookkeepers, they are so trusted, they get asked all sorts of questions, you know, and I think we've got to keep an eye on that one. I'm not sure the government has been specific about that, but I know some of the larger companies have already paid back their furlough amounts.
Yeah.
Either after a public outcry or before the anticipated public outcry. They tried to beat it. So I know people like Tesco's and various other people have paid back. Apparently Co-op didn't, and they've been up for a lot of criticism recently, so they may well have changed that now. But yeah, I mean, I think if your business is suddenly shot through the roof because you're just doing everything virtually or something like that, then that probably is something to look at. We were unable to tell the member or give the member a definitive answer, but what we've said is that we will look into it, and we're waiting for some answers back from HMRC at the moment. But interesting to see. Yeah, it just shows you how important the bookkeeper's role is, you know, in keeping everybody on the right side of the law.
There's a couple here. Naomi's come back on the SAYS grant, and I completely agree with Naomi on this one. If a business was brand new in the earlier years, they may have had a small loss or profit in 16, 17, 17, 18, etc. Their profits may have gone down, but they may still qualify for SAYS. I think the profits must have been adversely affected, not necessarily gone down. That's absolutely right. Now, when you put into the claim, I think there is a question there that says you have to prove, I think for 3 and 4, you have to prove that your income's gone down rather than your profits have been in. But it does say significantly reduced, but it does not say by how much is significant. And a significant reduction on, say, £10,000 income is very different to a significant reduction in, say, a £50,000 income. So we'll watch this space, because there's going to be an awful lot of developments on this, I think, as Garry said, coming up. And Stephen says, I have a client who has not worked in 14 months. He is a roadie, although he would kill me if he knew I'd called him that. Says he is a sound engineer. Absolutely there. Yeah, I remember them as roadies. He asked HMRC to cancel this year's payments on account as he isn't working and cannot afford to pay them, and HMRC allowed it. We're now a little concerned that as he has a financial year that does not follow the traditional 6th of April to 5th of April, some old income will be included in the current SA return. Could this then call his grants into question, as the return will show some income? I honestly don't think I can answer that, Stephen, because HMRC are deliberately being vague. They have given some examples, but they are not stating exactly what the situation is with this. Now, as far as the grants are concerned, the grants are based on the quarterly income. So the grant that is currently available is based on income from the February, March and April, which is why one of the sites I was reading this morning says it's best not to actually apply for the grant until the end of April, the end of the quarter, so that you know and can compare your income from the previous year. So at the moment, grants 4 and 5, I think, are income reduced or adversely affected. And I think you've got to prove I'm just trying to think on Naomi's comment. I think there is something that says you have to give evidence of reduced income or cancelled appointments and contracts. So maybe it's a reduction on what you would have had if those contracts hadn't been cancelled. Very difficult. I think each case is individual. I don't think we can generalize much more than that, really, or be more specific than that. I think, again, if you've got any specific queries, do come and let us know, and we'll try and answer them for you.
Well, Stephen's come straight back and said thank you. Did you do the one on Suzanne from Suzanne Proctor? It's on the chat line there.
No. Suzanne, hi. Suzanne, I had a lovely chat on the phone this morning. So I have a client that claimed the first SAYS grant and did nothing else, and had a bit of expenditure for new equipment at the start of the pandemic so that staff could work from home. When you come to the end of the financial year, the figures are up on the previous year. Should they pay back the first grant? Again, Suzanne, I don't think I can answer that, because the first grant, if I remember back, it didn't ask you to make that declaration on income. So the first grant, I think it might be one where you might have to go to HMRC, and all these are going to be so individual. And I don't yet have the answers to these questions from HMRC, which is really the only source that we can get. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these questions. I'm actually going to send them to my contact at HMRC and ask if there's any way we can get some guidance, or I can get some links to the guidance. So I'm going to do that next week. So hopefully, I doubt if I'll have an answer for you next Friday. He certainly takes more than a week to get back to me, but we'll start to look into this for you.
I think there might also be complicated reasons why the turnover has gone up. It might be, you might not be comparing chalk with cheese, and it is going to be difficult. I mean, if they thought the last 18 months was difficult, I should imagine the next 18 months for HMRC is going to be just as difficult, if not more. But
they've got an awful lot of queries and checks to do, and I think what you have to think about is that if these grants have been applied for in good faith and they're not definitely fraudulent, I still maintain that HMRC have got enough on their plate dealing with fraudulent claims. These are the people who have definitely illegally claimed things that they should never have claimed for. Those that claimed in good faith, I think, I don't know, I would hope would be fine.
I think the main thing is that you ignore, you tell your clients to ignore their first instinct, which is to keep their head down, because HMRC will find out about things, and if you declare first before they chase you, that you are in a much stronger position, even if you can afford to pay it back immediately or whatever. I mean, always talk to HMRC, but an unprompted disclosure, as they call it, is a much favoured phrase, that they don't like to have to chase people.
No.
And so now is the time to get your client to hold their hands up as much as they will. And
yes,
they might.
I have to say though, Gary, I know we've got members who've got clients who are refusing to accept that they've done anything wrong, and they're saying, remember the first grant was when the whole of the country locked down, so most people were losing money hand over fist because of this. So I think that first grant is very different. I have to say, I think what probably happened is HMRC looked at the amount of money that was claimed and thought, oh, we didn't expect it to be that much, in the same way as the furlough claims. And after that, once the country started to open up again, some businesses were able to start trading, albeit at a slightly lower rate. And that's why they've put this proviso in. I think it's from the second grant, you actually had to sign the declaration of confirmation that something had been reduced. So interesting on that one. And also, Gary, the other thing you were saying about companies repaying back, of course, those large retail stores have started to now pay back things like the rate rebates and things, because they were getting no rates, and it's just not fair, because at some stage rates go to the councils and they've got to find their money. So
I think some people are still making big profits, and obviously some people are absolutely destitute now, having lost a viable business which wasn't viable during COVID. So I think it's only right that the latter of the two get the money, and the people at the front don't just jump on the bandwagon and take the government for all they can, It would appear to me that I think that there's a good balancing act out there. I think people are deciding to pay back of their own volition, and so I think that does look good. And if they get a good bit of PR from it, then so what? It's still money back into the pot, so that we've all got a little bit more for the people who really need it. So that's important. That sounds very political. I shouldn't be political at all, should I really? But it's not really. It's a moral judgment. We have to do that.
Stepping out from this slightly, a lot of the questions we've been getting coming through on a Friday afternoon have been to do with calculations of holidays and things, and these dratted 0 hours contracts and working on holidays. Can I just refer you back to Wages Wednesday? Ian did start this Wednesday this week to talk about calculation of holidays, and he looked at right at the very end of his presentation, he did a slot on looking at holiday entitlement. And what he said was, when he does his next Wages Wednesday, he's going to start to look at calculating exactly how much pay is owed. And as I said, I'm so glad he's taking that on. So any queries on those, if we've got anybody from here that's still got those queries, do send them in and we will get those forwarded to him, because he is also asking for other topics on payroll and things.
There are some really weird things. I mean, the one that's always got me is we've got people who are working for us part-time, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but they still get time off for bank holiday Mondays, and it's all this sort of weird calculation that has to be taken into account, Well,
it's interesting, because I thought I knew a fair amount about payroll, and listening to his explanation of why where do these 5.6 weeks come from. I thought, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of, and the regulations that he's got there, you know, that it's not just 5.6 weeks, it's 4 weeks of this and it's 1.6 weeks of this.
Yeah.
And it varies actually as to what you can carry over to next year. I've learned a lot from that myself. So yes, anyone knows.
If you haven't got your payroll qualifications, you can buy the chance to see these. But we're doing it for a very good reason, and that is that we don't want people having a bash at payroll thinking that it's easy, because if nothing else, Ian's programs prove that it is absolutely far from easy. There are so many intricacies involved with payroll, and we don't want to be seen to be aiding and abetting somebody to become a payroll expert overnight because they've seen 2 webinars, or because they've got a good idea, they think they know what they're doing, because you know, you can ruin a person's ability to live basically by if you get it all wrong, and also for them ever to try and claim anything back if they've overpaid, or you know, they're suddenly pounced on for a huge payment because they've underpaid because of a miscalculation by the person that's handling their payroll. So it is very important. That's why we restrict that one. The same as when we're doing some in coming months on taxation, there will be a restriction. You'll be able to see some bits, but again, we don't want you peeling off after having seen an hour and a half worth of webinar and thinking, oh, I'm not doing now, I've got to do somebody's self-assessment tax return. If it was that simple, we wouldn't need exams. If it was that simple, people wouldn't be failing, you know. So it's it's a very useful string to the bow to handle people's taxes. It's an absolutely fantastic extra service to be able to offer payroll, but you really do have to know what you mean. And actually, your ICB bookkeepers, you know this anyway. You tell me time and time again that you've come across people who are unqualified and uninsured and various other things who are working out there. Thankfully, those numbers seem to be disappearing a little bit. I can't exactly quantify it, but I know HMRC in recent years have really been chasing people up and work like the group that Jacquie works on, the tax strategy unit. I mean, that they are looking at ways of narrowing it even further and getting everybody qualified to offer that advice, and we're wholly supportive of that.
Yes, and Ian did mention that we are, and I'll mention it again, we're heavily involved in consultations on improving the status of tax agents, and we're going to be putting, I'm leading on putting our responses together, and Ian's helping me with that, and he's done some bits on that there. We are hoping to get the questionnaire out to you as soon as we can get it entered up, and anyone who can come back with answers to those very simple questions, it means we can actually put some statistics in.
I've been prompted here to say that you can purchase the webinar for £99, so look out for those if you haven't got that. It's a taster. We will contact you once you've had the webinar, make sure you're okay, and you know that you know what you're doing, and perhaps try and persuade you to take a qualification. It also says, otherwise, if you'd like to upgrade and get free webinars, the ICB payroll qualification exam can be taken remotely on any day of the week. Go out onto the website and find out more. So again, it's one of our exams. They're available 24/7, and they're good. It gives you a really good.
And the payroll exam is one that you actually get 24 hours to take, because there's a lot in it. I mean, it's a heavy paper, but you do get 24 hours to do it. Someone here has just said, would love a VAT webinar, especially with the new Brexit rules. Are you thinking of doing that? Well, I did do a series of 4 Brexit webinars earlier in the year. If you are a member, you can log in and see those. Anybody who wants to look at those, go onto the bookkeepers.org.uk website, click on resources and Brexit, and on the right hand side is a link to the Brexit webinars, and all of the details to do with VAT are on there. There are 4 of them. I've done import VAT, export VAT, I've done one to do with the bookkeeping, and then there is one for online sales if you're dealing with people like eBay or Shopify or something like that. So that is covered. Now, Angela's come up with an interesting comment here, which we did talk about in the early days. Now, this is to do with our members, I think. And Angela says it's quite difficult because I presume she means for us as members, because some clients were closed, which will have affected the workload. So then for our members, they probably reduced their income. But furlough created extra work for other clients, maybe, which could result in a higher annual profit. Now, that's a difficult one, because if you look at what you have to sign, on the evidence you have to prove for claiming it. It does say proof of cancelled contracts or something like that, or reduced income. But what it doesn't say is if one part of your business has gone down, the other part's gone up, if you can still claim. So I'm really not sure where we're going with that one, Angela. We did say in the early days that it's going to be up to you as individuals to decide, you know, and in the early days, we didn't know what was going to happen. And I think a lot of people did claim the first grant, our members, and maybe put the money aside if they didn't need it. So it's really just a question of...
It raises an interesting point, though, Jacquie, that we've discussed in the past here, that the actual number crunching work takes up such a lot of time, but the advice obviously doesn't take up as much time, but obviously it made more profit. So I think it's the way a lot of our members are going. They are, in many cases, employing an extra person to do the day-to-day, I call it number crunching very rudely, but you know, it's easy enough. And then they, as principals of the business, are concentrating on advice, guidance, and talking to, etc.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I, not that I would ever contradict you, Mr. Carter, but can I just say we've got to be very careful. All of us have to be very careful, particularly members, with the use of the word advice, because as part of this consultation, HMRC are trying to look at defining what is advice and what is guidance. And basically, guidance is where you would present maybe a couple of options to your clients, and advice is where you say, well, these are the options, I suggest you take that one, or this is the best one to take. That's advice, whereas guidance is where you guide them towards things. So I think we've got to be quite careful about the terminology, because ICB has always said that it doesn't allow its members to give tax advice. Now, one of the lists in the consultation document that HMRC have stated as giving tax advice is the daily input of transactions into a bookkeeping system, which makes us tax advisors, which goes completely against what we have always thought. So I'm fighting that one on our behalf. They're trying to get a definition of what is a tax advisor. And again, I still think they're very lazy about the words tax advisor and tax agent, because for me, a tax agent is very specific. It's someone who is a tax agent with HMRC. One is an advisor can be an agent, or it may not be, and vice versa. So yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff going out. Right, the questions are flooding in. Carol says, oh, this one is going to go round, isn't it, Carol? I have a client, a director, who is furloughed. The company is due to start repaying the business bounce back loan in June, and the director wants to pay part of his salary into the company as a director's loan if cash flow is insufficient to cover the loan repayments. My thoughts are that he can't do this, or he can, but he has to come off furlough. Well, if he's working, he's going to have to come on furlough anyway, I think, because it's this flexible furlough for directors have caused us all an issue since flexible furlough came in. And I think you've got to look at what's happening. If he is completely furloughed, the bounce back loan, I have to say, look to see if you can take the payment holiday, because there is on some of the grants and loans, there is a payment holiday of 6 months, which can be taken at the start. So if he took the loan out last June, he's due to be repaying it. There is an option that he might be able to defer that a further 6 months. Paying the loan, I'm not sure in itself constitutes running the business. Just paying back the loan, I'm not sure. It's income generation work that he can't do. So if it's just paying back the loan, he's taking his salary on furlough.
Yeah, I think you could argue a good point on that.
That's the point, actually, because he's taking the furlough, getting a furlough grant, using that to pay. Oh, yes, I agree with you, Carol. I see where you're coming from on that one. So you're taking a furlough, you're taking a salary, you're claiming it back on furlough, and then using it to pay back the business bounce back loan that you got from the government in the first place. Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
I need to think about that one, Carol.
Why doesn't anybody ever come forward with a straightforward yes or no?
It's worse, isn't it? I'm thinking longingly back now to the early days when everything was so simple and everybody was furloughed and it was all quite simple. Yolanda says, I am really glad that ICB now offer this update in payroll. I got the diploma in 2012. I've been keeping myself updated. I think it's really complicated and you need to keep studying it. And Tarasina said, thanks for the links. Yeah, no, I agree. Even I'm struggling because I don't do payroll every day now. I used to for a number of years, but I don't anymore. And I have to say I'm struggling to keep up with it, which is why I'm so pleased we've got Ian on board now, taking on all the high level stuff for payroll. The one thing I will say, though, Ian is brilliant with us as bookkeepers, but there are a few things he says which are geared in towards the larger companies. So things like gender reporting and that sort of thing. Be careful, because unless you're running payroll with over 250 employees, don't get scared that you've got to start doing that, because some of what he's covering, which he has to cover, is aimed at the large, medium and larger companies, not the smaller micros that most of our members deal with. But if you're running a payroll bureau for large businesses, you know what you've got to report anyway.
Yeah. I think that's the case. I mean, he obviously does a lot of advice for the larger companies. I think we have got less than a handful of people who deal with that size of business. Having said that, those handful of people may well be tuning in. I'm sure they were, in which case the advice was no doubt gratefully received. So we have to cover all angles.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I think we've answered all the questions.
Great. In that case, then we'll take that as an excuse to bask off once more into what is remaining of the sunshine down here, at least. And yeah, we will see you all this time next week. Thank you once again, Jackie. It's been a great day, and yeah, let's everybody out there have a great day. Have a great
Naomi
week.
says have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much to everyone, and yeah, I'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.